Good morning, London! This is Elizabeth Tyrell with London Morning News, here with a very full morning of news. Today's very action-packed, and we will be wrapping up with a very special interview. Without further ado, let's hand it over to Anna Marie, who's live covering the Globe Theater as we speak.
This is Anna Marie, reporting to you live from inside and outside the Globe Theater. Today we are bringing you the latest updates on the latest play, Romeo and Juliet. Our viewers who are interested in knowing a little bit more about Romeo and Juliet before going to see it are not wanting to miss out this upcoming interview, where we interview people who have just seen it and some of the original casts from the first production. Sir, can you tell me a little bit about the play? What were your opinions about it?
Oh, it was amazing. The party scene was incredible, and the plot twist at the end was shocking, and the whole play was just really well made. It made you question the enemy and the plot and themes. The themes significantly made me question fate and whether it was real or not, because I really genuinely didn't believe it, and I always really do recommend considering watching it too.
Thank you so much for your honest opinion about that. Now, on to the interview with one of the original cast members from the first production of Romeo and Juliet. I have Robert Goff here today with me, who played Juliet Capulet in Romeo and Juliet. Please tell us a bit about your time on set, Mr. Goff.
Please, call me Robert. And let me think of the first ever production, about 3 years ago.
A long time ago.
Yes, it was. Well, in the beginning, the play actually wasn't as popular as you might think. It was really frowned upon. It was really frowned upon by the church, unlike now. Something to do with it taken away from the time it would have been better spent practicing religion. Funny how the time changes now. It's become so popular, you can tell that it started to become popular. There's more people laughing, crying, commenting throughout the play. It was a huge sign of enjoyment.
And I hear the concessions were pretty good too.
Oh yeah, I would eat those instead of dinner sometimes after performances.
Sounds amazing. Did you tell us a bit more about who you were in the play and the rest of the cast members in it?
Absolutely, I was actor for Juliet, and you might think, why? Actually, I was considered a performer for one part of plays. Often the parts were played by younger boys, including myself. I played Juliet, by the way. But we made some good memories. There was this one time when I realized that we had the wrong prop and belonged to another play after already making it, which back then it wasn't funny, but now I can see. But now you can see back then, the cast not only had to perform, but also create the sets, props, costumes. It was such a fun day.
That sounds like a lot of hard work.
It was, but the overall experience was worth it. And since we performed Romeo and Juliet 4 times to 6 times a week, every week, meaning the costumes and props didn't go to waste after being used for one production, but they were rather used in entire time for theater.
Well, thank you, Robert, for joining us today and giving us such an insight on what the first production was like. Now, back to you.
This is Bobby reporting you live from London. Today I'm bringing you the latest updates on Elizabethan fashion. Our viewers who are interested in any fashion, specifically Elizabethan fashion, will not want to miss out on this report. According to an interview with Fulber, we learned Queen Elizabeth was the start of a new trend. Another source, Elizabethan costume, confirms this and adds Queen Elizabeth original outfits is what started the rage in fashion. The characteristics of these clothes are somewhat hot, big, stiff, and also kind of soft. We have a quote from Gilda Radner saying, "What were they thinking to the posturing men in the portraits and pumpkin pants and women's necks lost in layers and layers of rug?" Of course, depending on what economic class you're in, is the type of clothes you will buy. To conclude this news segment, Elizabethan fashion is literally and figuratively very hot. Now off to Talia with the weather. Take it away.
Hi, I'm Folly with your daily weather update. I'll be covering the weather in London, England. Looking ahead at your 3-day forecast, today we'll have a sunny morning led by cloudy afternoon. The temperature is around 16 degrees today, followed by thunder and lightning Tuesday and Wednesday with an average of 15 degrees Celsius both days. Now, take it away, Malcolm.
I'm John Rand, and I'm here to tell you about the relatively recently started war. It's been about 3 years since the start of the war. We just recently got some information from our field reporter, who just recently returned to our set in London. Today I'm going to cover the Battle of the Yellow Ford. Our reporter arrived in the battle at the very beginning of the battle. It ended in an Irish victory. I'm told the battle was relatively even throughout the thing, until the Irish made a final push. They got the battle. They started relatively here near the campsite. We don't get the exact area. They would travel all the way up here to where the war was. And now, we're going to cover our next war. I'd be honored to tell you, but we actually have the reporter who's on field now.
Well, thank you, Malcolm. I'm not too prepared, but I'll do my best. My name is Annie, and I'd like to tell you about I can't even call it a battle, but more a massacre. It was quite calm at first, more of a standstill.
Well, that's not too bad. When did it go downhill?
Well, that happened as soon as the Spanish attacked, and they had more men and more everything, really, and the Irish really had no chance to win. I started to feel bad, and I guess that's about it. for this one.
Well, thank you for joining me on short notice. This has been Malcolm Goddard with the War Updates.
Good evening, London. You're all very welcome. We have a fantastic guest tonight. Everyone, please give a warm welcome to the man, the myth, the legend himself, writer of The Taming of the Shrew, Titus Andronicus, Hamlet, King Lear, and many more, William Shakespeare.
Hello. Good day to you all. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, of course. No, thank you for being here tonight.
It is my pleasure.
What a charm, am I right? So, let's talk Romeo and Juliet, shall we? I mean, wow, what a play. Antonia, roll the footage, please.
Let us take the law on our sides. Let them begin.
I will frown as I pass, and let them take it, they list.
Nay, as they dare, I will bite my thumb at them. It is disgrace to them if they dare.
Do you bite your thumb at me, sir?
I do bite my thumb, sir.
No, do you bite your thumb at me, sir?
Is the law on our side if I say aye?
No.
No, sir, I do not bite my thumb at you, sir, but I bite our arms.
Do you quarrel, sir?
Quarrel, sir? No, sir.
If you do, sir, I implore you. I will serve you as a man.
No better.
Well, sir.
Say better, here comes thy many man's.
Yes, better, sir.
You lie.
Oh, draw if you be breakers. Remember, young's washing gloves.
Art fools, put your swords down, you know what not to do.
What art thou drawn among these battle hinds? Turn thee, Benvolio, look up thy death.
I do, but keep the peace, put thy sword, and manage it part these men with me.
What drawn and talk of peace? I hate world. I hate as hell all Montagues in there have thee, coward.
Chills, literal chills. I mean, the writing is magnificent.
Thank you. You flatter me.
Well-deserved flattery, I assure you. So tell me, what sets Romeo and Juliet apart from the others?
Well, even at its core, Romeo and Juliet is way different than anything I've ever written. For starters, Romeo and Juliet themselves aren't really anything special. Just teenagers, exceptional status, no, or anything. Boy and girl, Norton, Texas door types. And if you catch my drift, the circumstances they've been brought up are quite on the contrary. They're extraordinary. They're caught between an ancient feud between two families. Neither side quite sure how they began, and they both still hate each other. Which the exception of our two star-crossed lovers. That makes what difference? That makes no difference to them. There are no King Lears or Othello. It's just two kids infatuated with one another in deep and desperate situation.
Which is part of what makes this play so amazing, the way that you could take a detour from your normal writing route and produce something of the same caliber with different character standings.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Most people have overlooked the full title of the play, which is The Tragedy of Romeo and Juliet, and they're shocked to see how it ends. We of course won't spoil it for our audience, but needless to say, it does live up to its name.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's actually quite the marvel, although I must say, throughout the first couple of acts, I had trouble convincing myself that it would end in tragedy regardless of the prologue, because of how well you wrote the adolescent's ignorance to the situation. Was there ever a moment where you considered scrapping the whole idea for a romantic comedy?
Well, I like the idea because I was very attached to Romeo and Juliet. I don't think so. I felt it was necessary for it to begin and end in a tragedy. To convey the message that, well, I don't want to spoil it for the stars, but the stars are big, part of it.
Why, yes they are. So on that note, what gave you the idea for this whole thing? Was it from your head, or...?
I wish I could take the credit for it, but it wasn't my play. The play really is more of an adaptation of sort of narrative poem, the tragical history of Romeus and Juliet of Arthur Brooke in 1582. French evangelist in the tale from, well, you get the idea. Everyone knows the tale of star-crossed lovers in the writing world, and we've adapted it in some way, I'm sure.
Very interesting. So, as those of us who have seen the dashing Richard Burbage play Romeo alongside young Robert Gough's Juliet, and they're absolutely marvelous, I must say.
The best of the best, in my opinion.
I absolutely agree. What is your relationship to those esteemed men? Do you get along, or are there tensions on set?
I don't think I've ever been a less tense set, to be quite honest. Richard and I have been close friends for a while now. He even helped me build the Globe Theatre. And Gough is just such a sweet young man. And he plays such a convincing woman. It's impressive, really.
Wonderful. Now, I know you had originally been performing it at the theater with Lord Chamberlain's band. What was the switch to the Globe like?
Well, you know, there's some saying a home isn't a building, it's with the people you live, which it's the same concept with my actors. They're all friends, almost family, and anywhere you go, we can take our own. Which I think it's really lovely. We could go from a primary school stage to the Globe and back, and our shows would be just as one powerful, I believe.
That really is lovely. Well, before we wrap it up, do you have any tips on how to stay safe during this pandemic?
Stay inside, of course, unless you're coming to see my play.
Thank you, Ariel. And with that, this concludes our Monday morning news. Good day to all of you, and make sure to check out The Tragedy of Romeo and Juliet in theaters now. Stay safe and be well. Once again, I'm your host, Elizabeth Tyrell, signing off.